Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Bill Hansen, a Vice President of Sales for the Central Region. I'm here joined with John Gallagher, Sales Director for the Central Region, coming to you from a very rainy and, according to my Ring doorbell, a lot of hail in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We thank you for joining us for this part of our How to Grow Your Business series. Just a few housekeeping items. We will be recording this and providing it in a follow-up email. For any of you that may have any questions, I encourage you to utilize the chat feature. Both John and I will be managing that as we tag team this presentation. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So what we're focusing on today is, growing your agency, um, and, building a sustainable agency. So as we are right now, the state of the market when it comes to Medicare and the health insurance side of things has been fluctuating for sure. We want to cover in this, building what's needed to build a sustainable agency, what's needed to scale your operations, and what type of automations are going to be there to assist you during that process, and really answer some important questions like, are you simply selling insurance or are you building a business? How can I grow as a one person show? Think about this. If you took 2 weeks off tomorrow, what would stop working and how would you prevent this? And then finally, if something major were to happen in your life, is your agency prepared to keep running and outlive you? John, you can go to the next slide. Okay. As a state of the market right now, as you can see, for last year was a very interesting market when it came to the Medicare Advantage market. We do expect to have a very interesting market coming up this coming AEP. As we're seeing right now, there is more competition for independent agents and agencies out there. This comes in the form of many different marketing tactics through online contact, spam calls, text messages, call centers. And one of the biggest ones that's popping up is through Facebook is, competition getting in front of your clients with very attractive online social media advertisements. As I mentioned last year, we did see quite a bit of disruption and some entire carrier exits from areas of the country. And we really do expect that turbulence to continue into this AEP. Um, this can this does create risk of more clients moving around, but with this uncertainty and these changes also comes opportunity. All of us on this call, I think, can agree that over the past few years we have seen the cost of overall healthcare go up, and we don't really see that changing anytime soon. I know John and myself both have little girls at home, and anytime we're taking them in, we're seeing those costs go up, and that same holds true for all of your clients, both on the ACA market and on the Medicare side of things. Another big thing that we saw and we are continuing to see is commission fluctuations, reduced commissions being cut out completely during certain parts of the enrollment season, and just overall changes surrounding that when it comes to ACA and even more so with Medicare Advantage. We do see that happening and we will continue to see that happening. And those are going to be some of the things that we are going to talk about in the presentation to help weather that storm. Next slide. So what are the keys to building a sustainable agency? Obviously, retention is a huge portion of this, maintaining your membership and maintaining those relationships. So you are an advisor to these individuals. That relationship needs to remain strong. Now more than ever, with individuals being impacted by revenue strains completely going away, like the elimination of PDP commissions, it's important that you as an agent are representing more than just the base of their Medicare coverage and the base of their ACA coverage. So you can bring in multiple revenue streams and also get multiple products on the books with your client, which makes them more sticky. With that also comes consistent client growth. Right now, our industry is really in full swing with technology for better efficiency, accuracy, accelerated growth. We are in the midst of a technology revolution when it comes to the word AI. Many agents are very fearful of this. You should not be fearful. Think of AI as a tool you can utilize. It's never going to replace you as an independent broker that has established that relationship with your client, whether it's sitting belly to belly or over the phone with them. That relationship is something that AI and technology cannot and will not ever be able to replace. We've seen attempts on eliminating the importance of meeting with your clients from call centers that have since, been disbanded. And really, you as independent agents and agencies working with your client provide a service that no technology can ever overwrite. Um, excuse me. When starting out in this industry, it's very important that you're set up properly. If anyone on this phone is new to the industry or on this call is new to this industry and they're set up as an individual rather than agency, we definitely encourage you to set up and get appointed as an agency. There are many reasons for this that John will go into in his portion of the presentation, but a lot of it has to do with just the many different types of contracts that are out there. They vary by carriers. Some have death clauses in there. If you're not set up as an agency, those commissions are going to stop. There's no way to get those to your loved ones. So we want to make sure that you're set up properly from the start. And we're here to assist that along the way. And really, when it comes to the end game, the end goal, what is the finish line for you? What does that look like? Is there, someone else coming in to take over the business? Is it going to stay in the family? You know, we want to know, we want to get you how show you how to get there and help you get there when you're ready to move on and retire. Next slide. As I kind of mentioned when I was talking about AI and the fear of technology, you're more than just a Medicare salesman. You are a trusted advisor. This is a business that's built on relationships and thrives on relationships. And you do much more than advise them just on their health coverage. You've already earned the trust of these individuals, and you need to be the first person that they call for coverage beyond their regular health needs and Medicare needs. It used to be in the past, typical touch points for a client would be about 4 touch points a year. Their birthdays, maybe Thanksgiving, leading up to the enrollment season, after the enrollment season's done, making sure they have ID cards, so forth and so on. The industry has changed, and now that average has grown quite a bit to an average of about 14 touches a year. Now, this may seem like a lot. Don't be alarmed because we have some tools that can help with these touch points. But if you think about, just for me, for example, I have the privilege of going to get a crown done tomorrow. So I got a text from the dentist, I got a call from the dentist, and I got an email from the dentist, all looking for me to confirm that appointment. Then after that, I guarantee you I'm going to get a text email as well for me to leave a review. The ability for us to reach out to our clients is expanding, and we have some great tools to help you with that along the way. You think about birthdays, over the counter reminders, preventive care reminders. There's so many different things that we can help automate for you. These will be some of the things that we can implement through this outreach at JSA through many of the tools that we have to offer. Now, this is one thing I want to talk about is with the changes that we've seen in the Medicare market and the ACA market, it's incredibly important that you're looking beyond that. If you're only selling in the Medicare market or only in the ACA market and you're not working with any ancillary or life products, you definitely need to make the move into that realm of things because we're seeing so much instability. However, with instability comes opportunity. We need to have more coverage offered to our clients. For me, it was on the PNC side of things. I didn't hear from my PNC. I spent years in Florida until I had a claim for homeowners. It took my car insurance person to say, "Hey, why don't you work with me for this? When was the last time you heard from your agent?" These are type of things that we need to be front of mind for all things insurance related when your clients think about their needs, even beyond just health and Medicare. One of the big things I think that's very important that some agents may overlook, some are very good at it, but don't be afraid to ask for referrals. You know, those are those are already relationships you've developed with these clients. If you've been a great advisor to them, then they should be feeding you referrals, and those are just the best lead source you have available to you. With that, I'm going to hand it over to John, who's going to go over some diversification options.
Everybody, my name is John Gallagher, the sales director here with JSA. Kind of piggybacking off of what Bill was saying before, I think a lot of what we're going to talk about coming up here are the multiple different product lines. Some agents are a little gun shy on. Totally understandable. When we've built these businesses and gotten into the Medicare space, we have been strictly, in that one track mind of offering just the health insurance products, Medicare, making sure we got health taken care of. That's that. My 13 years at JSA, that's always been the forefront. Over the years, new products have come to market. Products have been around for quite some time of other, coverage options. But with the changes like Phil was discussing from our own, perspective with commissions, but also with the health insurance industry as a whole with the rising costs, and not even just in the health insurance industry or health insurance itself. Outside of that, the big talk of everybody with the economy, inflation, things of that nature, the dollar just doesn't seem to go as far as it used to before. So if we could find ways to limit that risk for members by offering multiple product lines, that's going to help us in the long run, and of course, empower our members too by giving them choice and giving them options. Now, the other thing I'll say here too, and I say it all the time to people who are on the call I've spoken with before, we're going into this as individuals who are talking to our members and giving them every option. We're not going in and just saying, "Quick, here's a quick Medicare, so walk away." We want to be able to walk in and say, "Hey, I want to talk about your full insurability needs." You don't have to buy everything, at that point, but I want to make sure that I tell you about your options. I want to be your educator. I want to walk in and, the joke I always say is we're not selling a diamond detailing package when we buy a new car, right? We're selling something that actually has tangible value to a consumer, and emotional value too. So what we wanted to start off with again was, diversifying. It does again, make you more resilient to the changes in the market, less dependent on that one product selling season, and being a little bit more efficient. We all remember the great PDP swaps. I won't name names of certain companies, but we've all been through those years of AEP where we were flipping books of business back and forth with prescription drug plans, and it felt like that's all AEP was. I wasn't making any new business, new revenue. I feel like the past couple of years, many of us on the call have probably felt that way too with the Medicare Advantage space, with the plan exit and things of that nature. So, from the first perspective, is diversifying our health book and making sure we spread it out responsibly, of course. We want to make sure that we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket, but we know we have to do what's right by the customer. But if we can do that, we remove that element of surprise when we get hey, this plan's being service area reduction, or hey, it's being suppressed online, or hey, the usual updates we got every other week before AEP last year or during AEP. We want to avoid that problem. So outside of spreading out our health and Medicare business, we also need to start diversifying, and even, us at JSA is a focus of ours, into the complementary product space. Not all clients are the same, and they do have those variety of needs, whether it be the products that are listed there or other products that are out in the market. I could tell you there's a whole slew of them, from travel insurance. We found one recently that was an airline pilot insurance if he happened to be grounded for a certain amount of time. So there's a lot of different products out there we can offer niche markets, and help with insurable needs. But we're going to focus primarily on health, life, health, and under 65, that clientele. So to start with cancer insurance, when we think about cancer insurance, everyone, on the call is probably like, okay, yeah, chemo's covered, radiation's covered. We go through this with our members every time on a Medicare Advantage plan, but we want to look beyond the cancer coverage in health insurance, primarily because Medicare, ACA, they are not going to cover anything beyond that. You're just your basic stuff. I'm going to get my health care done. They're not going to be taking care of the fact of I need to have maintenance medications post treatment to recover. Okay, great. You may have some of that covered, you may not. It could be some experimental medication that is not approved yet, or you're waiting for approval from Medicare for an exception that you still have to pay for somehow. And that can get pricey very quickly. It doesn't talk about if you want to go to a preferred provider, if you want to go to John Hopkins, you want to go to Cleveland Clinic, you want to go to some specialist somewhere. You have to be able to have that choice, and think of yourselves even in those situations. What choices do I want if I do get diagnosed with cancer, and what wouldn't be covered by my health insurance or Medicare? So we have to look into that and say cancer is an option, and we're not trying to $60,000, $70,000 policies out there. We're looking to find something that's going to help them get by and help them financially to make sure that they're not blowing through their nest egg. They're not breaking the bank, and they're not having to go take loans out, things of that nature, or going to Medicaid status for those individuals. So having a cancer discussion and just saying, hey, the chances are a lot of people do get cancer, but let's talk about it, let you know you have this option. Moving on to hospital indemnity. So hospital indemnity is very commonplace in the Medicare Advantage area because it fits so well with filling the gaps of Medicare, your inpatient hospital stays, outpatient procedures, ambulatory, things of that nature. So hospital indemnity is a great filler that we can provide to our customers, especially during open enrollment or even post open enrollment to revisit it. It's easier when you're sitting down with them once a year. We all know time is very valuable during that time too. So, but you could do both at the same appointment with that scope of appointment, but we can help cover those big unexpected costs. When the worst happens and you have somebody that has to come up with $1,500, $2,000, especially with people on a very, I wouldn't say over the top fixed income, but their fixed income, they have to be very cognizant of how they're spending their money. We want to find ways to reduce that risk for them by offering them a lower premium plan to cover the big costs. Next, getting into short term care. So, with short term care, personal stories here, I think we all have one. We know someone who, a post op, been in a situation where, hey, you're going to need somebody 24/7 to keep an eye on you, but we're taking you out of the hospital. You're no longer considered acute inpatient. You just need recovery care now. We all would prefer to, recover at home. I believe everybody on this call. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in a facility when I'm trying to relax and get myself better. But having these discussions with consumers to say, hey, your coverage only goes so far with this. Let's talk about what Medicare doesn't cover for short term recovery care. Let's make sure you have a plan in place. And maybe someday down the road, they know they're going to have a knee replacement, a partial knee, or a full knee replacement that may need some extra care afterwards, or a hip replacement, what have you. Having these discussions in advance, making sure, of course, we're ahead of anything underwriting wise. Having those discussions is going to help them from a financial standpoint for those big costs post Medicare coverage. And then, of course, make sure that they can recover comfortably and where they want to recover. Again, giving them that power to make a decision. Dental is something we think is going to be hit majorly this year. As we've seen over the past probably 10 years, dental has been a very big part of a Medicare Advantage plan, and even in the ACA realm as too, as a product offering to pair with ACA. With the cost of healthcare going up and we're seeing a lot of risks moving around, we think dental is going to be one of the ones, like the I should say, benefit that'll be hit hardest the most. So when you think about that, that is a very underutilized benefit that we're going to see them say, hey, we don't really want to cover this cost anymore. We have to save some money over here with all the risks we're taking. We're going to make this a rider again. That you remember those platinum riders that certain carriers came out with, or it's just going to be bare bones dental. What we need to be prepared for is saying, hey, your dental coverage is going down, or it's not going to be as great as it used to be. I do have some other options for you if you have some work you need to have done within the next year or two. Let's have that discussion and make sure I got you on a plan. Or we can talk about it even at a later date, but we need to sit down and have that. The next thing we are seeing as a great option, for agents to increase revenue, number one, and diversify is start talking annuities. Again, the one big thing I think a lot of agents are gun shy on is I've got my referrals coming from my life guy or my financial advisor. I don't want to upturn that apple cart. It's great. We're having great referrals back and forth. I don't want to get involved with it. Where we look at that is you're not replacing the role of a financial advisor, but you got to think on their end too, their business model is changing as well. They're working with people who have larger amounts of wealth. My own personal experience, with some financial advisors, at one point I was looking to work with a gentleman. He said, well, you have to have at least 250,000 ready to invest. Okay. Who really has, 250, 500,000 laying around, to start doing some investments, for a lot of folks that you're working with. So where we can make a difference is discussing with individuals who don't have a large amount of it. And what we can do is start having those discussions. And see in the chat some of the things coming up there too, template scripts, cheat sheets and things like that. We do have some of that pre-built, building out right now too. Henry Monahan, if you've anybody on the call has worked with Henry, he's a stellar guy. He's worked with annuities a lot in the past. He is heading up that division now for JSA as VP of the annuity side. So that is something that we are looking to expand on and provide to you because we know it's a little bit of a heavy lift to learn that, but once you learn it, it's second nature is kind of what I've been told. So annuities is a great option too. Then we get into the life insurance. This is not just final expense. This is for preparing for the future, and there's multiple different options. I mean, a lot of us on the call work with ACA clients too, where you could be offering them a 20-year, 15-year term policy. And then, okay, great. Maybe we talk about a funeral trust for individuals who might be in a situation where financially they might be Medicaid down the road. We try to get some assets set aside. That way they have their burial taken care of. And then, of course, just having the end of life discussion. I know it's a tough subject to get in, talking with anybody. Nobody wants to think about the end of their life, but reminding them that life insurance is not for you as a customer, it's for your, surviving spouse, your family. And let's make sure that they're taken care of, which I think anybody on the call or any customer would want to do, or have at least a discussion to talk about it. So those are what we kind of find as the top products that we could be offering right now in the market and finding new ways to, create new revenue streams with our current clientele and new clientele. So with that in mind too, I know there's a lot of agents that I speak with where it's like, great, I'd love to be able to offer all that stuff, but man, I don't think I have the time. So we kind of look at this as maybe a moment of evaluating your own business and signs that you're ready for growth, and then signs that there's some things that need to be taken care of. So one of the things that when we think of signs you're ready for growth is you're consistently burned out. I think we all feel that way some days, but when you're consistently burned out and it's because you feel like the administrative side of things is taking up a lot of your day, prospects are kind of in the back burner because of that, because there's so much stuff that's coming up or problems. Client services is taking up a lot of your day. So when we think of all that stuff happening, it's kind of time to level up at that point. Let's try to find ways to level your business up, level up your processes to make them more efficient. So when we think about that lead generation, your marketing, and I use this phrase my grandpa always said too, your money should be working while you're sleeping. Your marketing should be working while you're sleeping. It should be going out there. It should be talking about your product, your services you offer, the products you offer, whether that be on social media, billboard advertisements, if it's email campaigns that you're sending out to your current customers, utilizing those automations to advertise on those various platforms and different media mediums to get new business through the door. Setting these systems up and promos weeks in advance, 30, 60, 90 days in advance. And then, of course, some people even set it for a whole year just to set it and forget it. Spend those 4 days one week and just get all my advertising done. So that's a great opportunity to alleviate that pressure. And then we get to the administrative support side of things. Now, I chuckle a little bit. We're not trying to get rid of the receptionist, but what we're trying to do is automate as much as we can for even a one-person shop to make sure that they can flow and not have to worry about stuff as often. So, the simplest thing of appointment setting. Everyone knows how to go online and book an appointment online. Majority of our seniors, individuals who are turning 65, they all know how to do it. I joke, we all book care appointments, a lot of us online. So everyone knows how to do it. Set up a system that integrates with a client retention management, a CRM, your Outlook calendars, your Yahoos, your Hotmails. There's just so many different ways you can integrate it. So get that one little thing off your desk and just have it set up where there's a calendar. You're available during set times. They click a spot they want to talk to you on, move on to the next. So that's a great thing we can work on. That's a small obstacle, which is a big pain point to remove. My apologies. And then we talk about the reminders portion. Bill had touched on that before. Getting set up with your CRM with text reminders, your appointment's coming up, or hey, I haven't talked with you in a while, or you make a note in your system, your CRM. We had discussed cancer and you wanted me to circle back with you. Is there a time we could set up here in the next couple of weeks using your technology to help you out with that? Will be great. So you're not having to sit on the phone all day and getting voicemails all day, and your time is valuable too. So other client touch points, automating those quarterly newsletters, those months that are specialty health months, promoting, hey, using your benefits, or even, hey, if you used your first quarter OTC, most of you only have a couple weeks left to use it, using your tools to help retain members and then also helping you to keep up with your members. So that's another great tool there, the client touch points. Application tracking. That's one other thing too, from an administrative side of things, I think is very tough during open enrollment, but if we can get a system that's well oiled in place in advance of open enrollment, it'll be so much easier, especially with the flip-flop feed. Where if there is that happening in your market or your region, I think on our end, we're all, hoping, wishing, praying that does not happen to anybody, but we all, be naive if we didn't know that would happen. So that is one thing. That we could do too is to have an application tracking process in place. Now we get to the enrollment processes and plan information. So, with the various tools in the market for enrollment and online resources, I don't want to knock any of the carrier platforms because they're great. There's been a lot of investment and technology put into them. But what we got to think of is with our time and value during open enrollment, having those systems in place where I can offer multiple products, one spot, quick and easy. They've been out for years. If you haven't started with, any of those platforms, which we'll get into on the next slide, you really should be looking into those this summer, and starting to get that taken care of. And again, one note here I have is, efficiency is going to be key, especially with these upcoming open enrollments. Then we get into, compensation, tracking, and audits. Everyone on this call works hard for their money. You know, with all the changes that happen, we need to be making sure that compensation is getting paid to us properly. And what I would say too is keep a very close eye on things that change. They happen so fast, especially that we experienced this past year towards the late part of September. There are changes consistently happening as more carriers left the market and decided they weren't going to offer products in 2026. So be very cognizant of that. What counties are becoming non-commissionable? What carriers and specific plans? I've had the horror stories where someone's written over 100 apps and didn't realize, oh, that became non-commissionable 11/1. They took care of their clients, put them with the right product, but they're not going to be compensated with it. And that even included renewal compensation. So we want to make sure we're not having that issue come up. So be very diligent and cognizant. I know it could be very difficult during that time with there a lot going on. And one of the last things too about scaling the operation and getting it ready to go for this next year, remember data and storage. Ditch the filing cabinet, the Excel document. As much as we like to cling on to those old things and those old systems, we have to think if the worst of the worst were to happen, and your files were destroyed, whether it be a fire, flood, disaster, or even, your system crashes and your Excel document's gone. You know, how are you going to recover that? You have to make sure that you have something now that's in a secure platform like a client retention management, a CRM, or in the cloud. We have to make sure we have that. Connection to enrollment data platforms too. With that, that's going to be a great way of doing that. I know some agents have been doing that with Connecture, My Health Plan, Sunfire, as having all your notes and everything too. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. I would say though, look into also having a CRM that has a two-way discussion with those enrollment platforms. So if anything changes with that platform for enrollment, you have it stored somewhere else. I went to school for a brief time for graphic design. I was always told store it three ways: one physical and two digital. So always make sure you have three different ways of storing your data. And with that too, I mean, a lot of this stuff when you have it in a CRM, a lot of them have those connections, like I mentioned, to enrollment platforms. But you can also easily send out all your retention emails from there, all your text reminders, you could do your phone calls and recordings from there, your notes, everything. There's so much capabilities with CRMs now. And as Bill mentioned before, the AI function, it's not replacing us. It's a tool for us to help our industry. A lot of these CRMs are bringing AI functionality there. So one such instance with our CRM, which I'll speak on next here, pull up all my clients with XYZ carrier plan this and draft an email letting them know this hospital network's leaving. Boom, it creates it for you. You don't have to be a content creator anymore. So that's going to be the functional tool of AI for us on our end, which is great. There's always going to be a human element when it comes to AI in our industry. So for anybody out there that has the fear that AI is going to take, our role, especially with online enrollments and, clients go online to find coverage, there's always going to be a human element needed there. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to quickly go through here. These are the different tools and resources JSA currently offers, with more coming all the time. One I'll plug here, two things I'll plug here. But the top one being our My Health Plan platform. This is powered by Connecture. This is our white glove version of it, where you could do all of your online enrollments, or I should say a majority of your online enrollments, whoever is contracted with Connecture to do that. We also work with Sunfire. We know agents, have, their different preferences between the two platforms. I know Sunfire has Blaze Sync. some other functional features where, my health plan has market analytics. So each one has its perks and quirks. So with that, we do offer both. And with that, segueing into that, we do have our core platform, which core is our CRM. It does talk with both of those enrollment platforms, which is great, and does the two-way conversation. That way, when data is inputted in one, goes back to the other. The days of doing it twice kind of over at that point, which is great. Also has retire flow functionality within core, and I can't pretend to we'd be sitting here for 4 more hours talking about the functionality of our core platform with many exciting updates coming down the road too. But we also have our agent resource center, which has a plethora of data in it. The new thing that's coming with that, just a little hint, is it's a learning pathway for new agents. Can't say too much more yet. It's not ready quite yet for launch, which will be, I think, coming shortly. But it's a new routing for education on certain products. If you did feel fear of like, I don't know how to offer cancer products, I don't know how to offer this, ARC is going to be there with our learning management system. My quote's been with JSA for quite a long time. It still has a great feature of Medicare supplement quoting side by side. And what I love about it is the analytics, where it could tell you how Med Sup has been performing in the market. That way you can make a better educated decision with enrollment. And then we have our Pro Shop Plus. We are not graphic designers, as much as I joked I went to school for it. It was difficult, but that's why we have staff on hand that create marketing content materials for you to utilize with your social media advertising, with your print medium if you want to do that, mailers, educational events, things of that nature. You don't have to be a pro on it. You don't have to do a Word document, print it off, and try to make it look pretty with clip art. We've got a team that can do it for you. So definitely urge any JSA agents to poke around on there and see if there's any good marketing pieces you'd like to utilize in your business. The last plug I need to put in here, Technology Tuesdays is what we're having for our a webinar series coming out. So keep an eye out for that too, for a technology overview too. I know a lot of it can be daunting up front, but Technology Tuesdays are coming. So what I've been working with JSA outside of the sales role and helping with has been a lot of the succession planning. A lot of our agents are at that point of trying to figure out what they want to do in the market. And there's a lot of ways you can go about it, but with any agent or agency, they always have to have something, in the back of their mind. When I grow this big, and scale my business this big, what are my long-term decisions? How am I going to pass this on? What's my legacy? What's my point of, hey, I have reached my goal. I want to be able to move on from this and have somebody else take it over. We've advised agents, in that stage, the long-term, illness stage as well, people who become disabled, retirement. And unfortunately, we've had to take those phone calls of agents who have passed away unexpectedly and work with their surviving family members on what to do with that book of business. So we have a lot of experience with it and working with agents, preparing for the future, that build, and then getting ready for what if. I think every, agent or agency owner should be asking themselves the question, if worse comes to worse, who's going to serve my clients? How are my, employees or my family members going to access my records? The big one, where do my renewals go? I got to make sure my family's still taken care of with compensation coming in. Who makes the decision if I am in a situation where I can't legally sign anything? Do I have a business POA? With that too, do I have documentation on file in my will, trust to my business partner? Do we have something in writing that is signed, notarized? These are all big things that you should be discussing and addressing. Excuse me. And that would even be for a new agent. I would so recommend you have something prepared. Um, Another reason why I can't bring up enough times too, where individuals didn't have something and it went into probate for that book of business, moving it. And because of the rules and regulations with carriers saying, hey, sometimes you only have 90 days to move a book, probate doesn't go that fast, and it takes time. And we have to make sure we're prepared for what the industry has constraints on for moving books and make sure we obviously follow the laws and rules and everything. But if we could find that medium of having documentation, that's key. So what a lot of agents ask then too is, hey, John, hey, Sarah at JSA, how do I evaluate my book of business? We don't get into evaluations, but the main reason being is there's a lot of contributing factors with it. But what we could do, teach you is building the value of your business and what are things that agents consider as valuable. The big one being renewal revenue. and making sure you have records that show not just like the past year, past 5 years. Showing what every year what my renewals are bringing in, having a diverse book of business. I know sometimes it could be difficult with certain age brackets of individuals, but showing I've got income coming from diverse ways and of various different products. Working technology systems that are in place and implemented are big. The accessibility to member data, I could tell you I've had a book of business sold where somebody walked in and said, "Yeah, I sold my book to this guy. He's going to come pick up the records. Here's the baker's box." A little bit tough, but so yeah, having that information for member data is nice to have digitally and have it concise and easily accessible. And another note, shareable. Making sure that you have the ability to give that to someone in a quick format. So that's one thing too we can discuss. Specific member retention data, like we mentioned, having the as detail as possible. Another thing that builds value in any insurance agency is the referral relationships. What referral streams have you set up? Have you made connections with your local dentist, lawyer, financial planner? If somebody's coming to take over your business long term, where you're setting them up to, hey, you're going to succeed me, make sure you have those relationships ready and make sure they know what's going on too. So you can continue that flow of business coming in. So again, the book, the tech, the relationships, that all builds value and makes your business worth more. Whatever is, how to say it, the most turnkey businesses always are the best ones for selling. So if that makes sense, turnkey is better. But then also, a lot of agents ask, okay, great, I'm going to do all that. What are my options when I'm ready to sell? Okay, or hey, this has happened. What are my options? So I think every agency owner eventually exits, one way or another, from our industry. So the question is, are you going to be selling your book of business long term? Do you have another agency that you'll be merging with? Transfer to a family member? Is this going to be a brick and mortar that's passed down? Are there staff that's moving with this? Are there more moving parts and pieces? Again, like by me discussing this, I think maybe people on the call are thinking, "Oh, that's a lot to cover." Yeah, that's where we come in. But planning that in advance creates the flexibility down the road and gets rid of that hurdle of, "Gosh, what are we going to do? I'm in the hospital. I'm not going to be able to get out of here for 3 months. It's open enrollment. Who's running the show?" Getting this stuff in play in advance is going to be great. But I really urge anybody to call JSA in advance and start having those discussions. The sooner the better. It cannot hurt to have a normal conversation. Just, hey, I need to know what I'm having in my mind for the future. So definitely urge that. But that gets to the end here. So I'm going to turn it back over to Bill, and he's going to close us out.
Thank you, John. And thank you all for joining us. I wanted to, well, first off, thank you for your time. I thank you, John, for bringing up the Tech Tuesdays, which are kicking off next Tuesday, and they're every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, and they go over in detail a lot of our systems, such as our core CRM, which is an incredibly powerful CRM. I know many of you had questions about automations and things that you can set up through there. The automations you can set up through Core are immense and very easily to set up, and we're here to assist with that. But really, just to hit on a closing here, the business that you're building today should still be creating opportunities tomorrow. Take action today and prepare your business and go ahead and set some reasonable goals like 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months out, a year. Call and set up an appointment with one of us here at JSA and the sales team here in the Central region, or any of our regions for that matter. We're here to assist you in any way that we can, especially with some of this technology that we've been discussing. And as just closing, I want to thank you all for your time. We'll follow up with an email, and we wish you all a wonderful day.